month of September, Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month, and we're on another mission to interview another spinal cord injury person who has kicked spinal cord injury in its butt and not only surviving but thriving in the life to be powerful, motivated, inspiring, to move and to get somebody else up and going that feels like today's not a good day. They'll say to them and say, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. Welcome to the Professor of Perseverance podcast. I'm Dr. James Purdue, the Professor of Perseverance himself. And today, our guest, Brandon Sulser. Here's his book, We're All Paralyzed. We're all paralyzed. Hey, for some reason or another, you may not physically be there, but you might be there mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or physically, all of the above, somewhere. But he says we are all paralyzed, and the subtitle, The Remarkable True Story of Choosing to Live After 4 Life-Threatening Accidents. Be sure to get your book. Right there it is. Brandon, let me put that down, the book down, Brandon. Welcome to the show there, Brandon.
Welcome, Professor of Perseverance.
Hey, I do what I can. Just sometimes not enough. So
it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
And so far, again, we got Jan coming in. Powerful mouth of inspiration have provided. And we have a newcomer here, Rochelle, the Banji stroke survivor. Hey, thank you. Yes, come on in. And glad you're here, and glad you love the show. Thank you. So, and Jan saying hello, Brandon. So, all right, Brandon. Again, appreciate you being here. Let's go ahead and get this started, buddy. Go ahead and tell us your story, and don't hold back. Let's hear it, buddy.
Geez, you got all day though. That's an intro. I don't know when to stop, so you'll have to keep time on me. But it's great to be here. I'm assuming everyone that's on here is at least struggling with adversity. If that's the only thing in life that's constant is change. But the beautiful part about it is that we can control how it changes us. And that's what I've had to learn through my 4 life-threatening accidents. I've been everywhere. I've seen quite a bit. I've died twice that I know of, survived, but I've been through, from wanting to die to wanting to live, to having suffocating darkness to everlasting light. I've seen it all, and I've learned that our trials are for a purpose and for a reason, and I see a higher purpose through them, and that's what's helped me overcome mine. Just giving you a little idea about my story. It started when I was 12. I was mountain biking. I had moved from Colorado, and was part of the Boy Scouts here in Utah. And I wanted to fit in. And at the time, bike helmets weren't that popular as they are now. And the leaders nor my new friends were wearing helmets. And so I chose not to wear mine. I went down that canyon. We were about 9,800 feet up in the beautiful Wasatch Front. For those who have been to Utah, they're gorgeous, gorgeous mountains. On the way down from the trail, I told my friends to go on and go without me. I was overcome with just a deep gratitude for the creations that God made. I was taking in the beauty of the smells of the pine trees, the aspen trees, and the birds, and I just felt like I had to kneel and just say a prayer. And for a 12-year-old, that's really bizarre, but that's what I felt to do. And so I did. I got back up on my bike, and then I felt like something was going to happen, not knowing exactly what, but I got down to the bottom of the trail, and I had lived only a few blocks away from this canyon, and so I decided just to bike down the hill. As I was doing so, I blacked out, not knowing how, but I did.
Wow.
And when I did, my corner of this head tagged the corner of a concrete curb. And I woke up, and I was out for, I believe, 10 or 15 minutes. And when I woke up, there was an ambulance, and all sorts of people around me. My new scout troop, bleeding profusely out of my head. I could tell that, and I was surrounded by these paramedics, and the first words I remember saying, and I kept on saying this, is, guys, I've got to tell you, the people I saw and the experience I had. I had a very deep, meaningful experience, I believe, on the other side. And I kept on saying, I want to tell you more and more. And the paramedics like, Brandon, you have a horrible concussion. It'd be best if you just not talk right now. So I bit my tongue.
Let me jump here for a second, Brandon. Now, just a minute ago, you just said knelt down in prayer, for a 12-year-old, and that is rare because a lot
Yeah,
of teenagers and sub teenagers, they're all about other things in life, sports, girls. Maybe not as girls as older, but
yeah,
other things in
absolutely.
life. But for one to already be a believer at that age, I consider that rare. Even though you hear a bunch of other people, but thinking of the whole community, the whole world, that would be very rare. But then you wake up. You just said you wake up, and then you're telling them, "Hey, I've seen a higher place. I've seen something going on. Let
Yeah,
me tell you about you. You know the people that were non-believers. They're going." Hold on, Brandon. You got
yeah,
some
right.
brain damage going right here. You're
Exactly.
hallucinating. You're hallucinating.
Yeah.
So, all right, go
Uh-huh.
ahead. Go
Sure.
ahead.
Sure. And that'd be understandable for those, but yeah, I was born and raised a Christian and come from a very religious family. And so that's just part of my DNA. And so I was rushed down to the hospital, and my parents were there, and I wanted to tell them everything about it. And right before I was about ready to talk about the experience, the X-ray technician came and whisked me away, and about an hour went by, and I came back, and my mom and dad are like, "Okay, what do you have to say?" And I went to open my mouth, and it was gone. I don't remember anything. Um, the only thing I described, at least in the book, is it felt like a sealed door without a handle. But I knew that whatever was behind that was special and meaningful to me. And looking past my life thereafter, I understood that this probably was a very special thing that my spirit needed to know and to feel loved. The only sense I can say is that when I do think of that experience, the thought that always comes through my mind is that the beginning of our heartache is also the beginning of God's, because God loves us and He understands challenges, and so it was an interesting thing. And so they told me to go home that night. It was just a bad concussion, so I did. That night I couldn't stand hardly. I went to stand and I'd be dizzy. I went to go put my hand on my fingers on my head, and I would sink in. My fingers would sink in, and it felt like my spirit wanted to leave my body. I felt like death was very close. And again, I'm 12. I shouldn't be feeling these feelings for a 12-year-old. And so I called my parents in and I said, "Mom and Dad, I feel like I'm dying." And right when I said that, they noticed that my whole complexion was white, and they knew I was not feeling real well. And so I asked, and my parents, with their great example, we all said a prayer together, and we asked for, God to save my life. After we had that prayer, it was about 11 o'clock that night, and I got some rest, but I felt like I wasn't fighting my spirit to keep it inside of my physical frame. A few hours went by, and I wasn't getting any better. And so they realized, okay, something's wrong. This isn't a concussion. So we went back to the hospital. They could see that clearly I had regressed. I was not looking good. And they took me for a CAT scan this time. As I'm in the CAT scan, which for those, I'm sure many of you have been through a CAT scan because many of us have had adversity. We know how claustrophobic that can feel. I got in there, and it's loud, but I could hear people screaming and yelling behind the glass. And I heard just briefly, this Brandon is going to die. We got to rush him immediately. We had to life flight him. He has literally seconds to live. And I'm like, oh my gosh, really? And so they grabbed me and they rushed me out on literally a stretcher. And my parents, as we go by the ER, they're like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And they said, "We're sorry, but we had somehow misdiagnosed your son. When he had his accident, mountain biking accident, he actually ripped open his main artery in his head. He's bleeding internally. And from what we can tell, it's bleeding still. And it's going to eventually, the pressure is going to shove my brain down my spine, and that's it." I mean, so life flight came, which is a helicopter. And, the doctors are like, the ERs, they're like, "Say goodbye, Brandon, because we don't know if you're going to make it." And I looked at my mom and dad, and I just felt like if God really did save my life that night, he wouldn't take it in a helicopter. And so I just had that faith that I would still be okay, but I knew that I had to go through this challenging surgery. So I was life flighted to Salt Lake City, and I was headed immediately to surgery. It was like 8 or 9 hours. And I don't remember much afterwards because my life completely changed. And I'll tell you just a little bit about that. But one thing that really radiates to me that I really love, and it's a special witness for me, is that the doctors, when they came in, they said, "Brandon, we went in to save your life, but when we got in there, we were surprised that someone had already beat us to it." And my dad's like, "What do you mean?" And the surgeon is a brilliant man, and he goes, "I'm not a believer. I'm not faithful. I don't necessarily believe in God." But he said, "I don't know how else to explain this." He said, "We went in there, and your artery was completely severed." And he just explained it like this way. It's like turning on your main faucet at the house and trying to plug it with a little sewing needle. It just doesn't happen. But when we got in there, we saw a blood clot had developed. And he said, he quoted saying this, "It's like the literal hand of God was placing his finger over it." And
For a man that doesn't believe, he sits there and
he
says,
started believing. Yes. And yeah. And then this is really where we just had chills. He said, "We believe, based upon the blood clot, that blood clot probably developed the night prior, 11 or 12, that evening." And me and my mom, we're looking at each other, we're like, the power of prayer. The power of prayer. And, I want to say a couple of things on this. We've had, for those listening and for us and for me in general, the power of prayer works. But it has to be, how to explain this? It has to be according to God's will. If God's will was to take my life, the power of prayer at least would give me the strength to be okay with that and to find the positive through it. God's will was to save my life, and the power of prayer this time saved it because I was willing to ask. And so a lot of people say, "Well, I've prayed and, I wasn't healed." Well, God works in mysterious ways, and oftentimes the very challenges that we dread are actually the very things we needed to grow, because we had to have opposition in all things for us to grow, to become better or bitter. That's why we're down here, I believe.
and that also goes to we go through certain things, and it's to prove how strong we really are.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite scriptures is in the New Testament, 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 7. And it says this about trials. It says that the trial of our faith is more precious than gold that perisheth, though it be tried by fire, might be found unto the praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. And so to me, trials are huge for us. That's how we're tested. That's how we grow. And I learned that at a young age. After my surgery, I forgot how to do my spelling, and it took me 5 years to learn how to speak again. I was messed up horribly, and it was very, very, very tough. And at times I wanted to give up. I was very depressed. As a TBI, it was a struggle. By the time I got over that is when I was in high school, And 8 months prior, not 8 months, more like 4 or 5 months prior, I was working at the gym, or working out at the gym. And I really valued my physical body. I took a lot of interest in it. And maybe now looking back, I can see why. But I truly believe that, our bodies are our temple. They house our spirit. And I learned in scripture that I had to honor it. And I wanted to be as strong as possible. I felt that. And now I know why. But when I was at the gym, I had an overwhelming feeling inside of my soul whispering to me saying, Brandon, you got to work out your neck. And I did religiously. I could not leave the gym without doing that. And I became a meathead, and I was benching for an 18-year-old 350 pounds and just a solid guy. Fast forward 5 months down the road, and the doctors tell me that's what saved my life when I broke my neck, was that extra muscle. It's interesting when we follow the promptings, the whisperings of our soul. It's connected. It's connected to our Creator, and it's blessed my life in many ways and saved it. And that was one of them. How I broke my neck was I was running down a sand hill, down a Lake Powell. It's in southern Utah. Lake Powell, I believe, it's the largest reservoir in America, as far as coastline goes. It's huge. It's longer than the coastline from Washington all the way down to Mexico. It's that big. It's just a giant lake. I went down there with my family, and for me, it was my last trip that prior to I was going to serve a mission for my church and just serve, and I was looking forward to that. That was part of my purpose. I loved serving, and so this is my last trip before then, and I wanted to make it special. And I had my girlfriend at the time that I was dating, and friends and family. And on the second to last day, we went up a canyon called Moki Canyon, and it's about 109 degrees. It's just horribly hot, and it's a huge sandhill. And I look up, my sister's sitting on my lap, and I said, her name was Bridget. I called her Gidge. I said, Gidge, I'm going to climb that hill, and I'm going to run down. Won't that be awesome? And she's like, oh, great, And so I climbed up the hill with my friends, and halfway up it, I'm like, oh, I made a terrible mistake because it's so hot. My feet were on fire. And so we knew we had to hurry and run down the hill. As we were running down the hill, I went to, as everyone would do, they would dive into the water once, the sand ran into the lake there. I was about 5 feet away from my friends, and as we're running down, going faster and faster, momentum's catching up with me, and I went to go dive, and right before I was getting ready to dive, my legs got tangled in the sand and threw me down the hill prematurely, to where I dove into a shallow sandbank and broke my neck. And that's when, I lost everything I took for granted within seconds, as many of us know what that feels like. And I didn't realize there were privileges until I lost them. And I was face first in the water, and I thought, oh, this is a horrible way to die, because my family saw everything, and I could hear my mom screaming and crying, and just horrible. And I thought I was just going to sink. My friends flicked me over, and they carefully swam me back to the bank. And I told my dad, this is bad, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, son, this is bad. Because I couldn't move anything. And so I remember what we did last time. I asked my dad, can we all join in the power of prayer? That's what we did, because I didn't know what else to do. We didn't have cell service. We were miles and miles and miles and miles away from anybody. There was a few other boats there and a houseboat. Everyone that was on there came around, and we all joined the prayer. After we prayed, we had, I would have considered some miracles, although not the miracles that I wanted. There were 2 doctors from Colorado that were ER doctors that saw it, and they came over and they held my neck exactly how it should be. And they asked somebody for a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, because they were going to self-diagnose how bad I was injured. And so they said, all right, Brandon, we're going to pinch your toes. If you can feel it, that's a really good thing. And if you don't, we're going to draw a line across your body with this marker. So I'm like, okay. And so you can just see everyone's reaction. They're all looking at me, and they're just waiting for the only thing that would make it all right, and that would be a yes. And they pinched my toes. I had no idea they're pinching my toes. So I said, no, mark. They went up to my, my legs, and I said no. And then, while I'm saying no and they're drawing this line, I'm thinking, oh, there goes my ability to walk, my ability to run, to enjoy the outdoors, play sports. I was a good athlete. I'm like, golly. And they went up to my waist. I said no, and I'm like, there goes my girlfriend, possible kids, my pride. And I'm looking up at the blue sky, and I'm just begging inside, God, please say me something. And I went up to my chest, and I said no, and it was like this dark ladder of doom going up my body, and it went all the way up to my neck and my shoulders, and I said no. And the last words I remember is saying, dear God, I've lost it all. And really felt like I did.
And how old were you this time?
I was 18.
18, all right.
And so I waited there, and luckily we had somebody that saw my accident as they were coming out of the canyon that had just recently purchased this high-tech, this is in 1998, this high-tech CB radio where they could actually call out. I had satellite connection or something. So they called out, and they called for a patrol boat. I forgot what you call them, but anyway, on the lake, there's only 2 patrol boats that had the access to steroids. And this guy was like maybe 30 minutes away, which I think saved my life because the swelling was so severe. I think the doctors think I would have died. So they injected steroids into me, got an IV going. They called Lifeline. Lifeline came, picked me up. And they're kind of like, dude, don't we know you? You look familiar from your head accident. And I got frequent flyer miles, so that's nice. But I got Lifeline out of the canyon, and it was so hot that I couldn't take anyone. So just me and a nurse and a pilot. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm saying goodbye to my old life, basically. I'm leaving it all there. And I knew that this would be a different chapter, a chapter that I never imagined. So I was very depressed. I'm not going to tell you that I was, I'm faithful, but at this time I was depressed, and I was just horribly mad. And I waited there on a tarmac outside of Hanksville. It's a small little community, farming community. And I waited for a jet to pick me up from Salt Lake to fly me to Salt Lake to the hospital. As I'm taking off, we're flying, and I'm really depressed. And I guess we're flying through a storm. I didn't know it. I couldn't tell. But a bolt of lightning struck the airplane, and I almost took it as a sign saying, Brandon, life can't get worse. And so at least I didn't complain until I was on safe ground. Got rushed into surgery. My last breath of hope was the surgeon. And I'm like, you're going to fix this, right? I'm going to walk again. And he looked at me and he said, sorry, son, there's no fixing this. We're just going to, shear up your neck and repair your neck. But there's no fixing this. And so they put me asleep while I'm in tears. And, I'm thinking to myself, dear God, if that really is the case, I don't want to wake up. Just take me. And at the same time, I didn't realize this, but my family, as they were driving, because they were about 8 hours away, as they were driving, they were pulling over every once in a while, saying prayers, knowing how full of life I was and how much I enjoyed the outdoors, and I was just active, and knowing how hard it would be for me to life in a chair. And so they asked if it'd be Heavenly Father's will for him to take me as well, because they knew how tough it would be. Well, that obviously didn't happen, and I woke up, and it was just me. And I remember I was in the halo and on life support, and no one was there, and I was in a dark room. And I fully believe this, that we'll have opportunities in our life, and for everyone that has struggled in adversity, you'll know what I mean by this, is that we come to kind of, our backs are literally against the wall. We have nothing to give. We're scared. but we have a choice to make. The choice is how do we react, how do we respond. And I just had this thought come to my mind at the time, and it was this hymn, which I love. And let me think about it. Come thy fount of every blessing, to great, gospel hymn. And it talks about, here I raise my Ebenezer. And just in scripture study, I remember what the Ebenezer was back in the old days, and what they mean and what it resembles. And of course, I used to build Ebenezers when I used to climb mountains, and it was stacking rocks on top of each other and say, hey, I did that. I was here. Well, for me, I knew that I had to build my own Ebenezer there, that through the book of life or throughout eternity, I'm going to look back on this moment and say, that's where I testified of who I was. That's where I built my monument of my faith. And so I couldn't sing because my diaphragm doesn't work, so I'm quadriplegic. So it took me a while for me to learn how to talk, but I just mouthed the words. And I knew then that if I was going to get through this, as hard as it was going to be, I had to embrace a higher power. I had to embrace my better self. And that's what I did. And I was there for 75 days and had horrible days, some good days. But it was, it's not a life that we all envision. Sitting
Hey,
down.
Brandon, got a question from Nancy. During this time point now, all this going on, where you're talking about wanting God to go ahead and take you, but did you consider taking into your own life?
Of course, I considered it, but I let it go because I knew that that's not what God wanted me to do. I embraced the thought. What I mean by embracing is I thought about it, but then I remembered that, hey, I also have my free agency and I can choose how I want to react to it. And I let it go. I truly believe that when we have fear, when you hold on to it, it grabs hold of you. And I didn't want that negative thought. I didn't want to fear that negative thought because I knew that it would grab hold of me. So what did I did? I acknowledged it. I understood where it came from, but then I let it go.
And that's strong, and your faith, that's strong, that you can try to let it go. Where a lot of people, we say we're letting it go, but then we still want to throw our 2 cents worth in. That's where I
Of
get in
course.
trouble. Yeah, that's where I get in trouble.
Me too.
And so, for you to say, I'm throwing it all to God and throwing it all away, whatever, and not letting fear jeopardize anything here. So that's amazing in itself. Again, 18 is still a young age for a lot of people to
Yeah.
be spiritual, religious, however people want to call it, saved.
Yeah.
Still 18, that's a young age for some people.
It is, but I don't want to confuse people and say that I was just an angel. 'Cause I'm not. I was very mad. I was very upset. These are normal feelings.
Exactly.
So, that's normal. I just chose not to surround myself with, be in them, be involved in them, because I fully believe in life that we have two choices to make. It's either we choose love or we choose fear. I wanted to choose love, whatever that meant.
Yes. And
And
I tell other people also, we have two choices in life. And I didn't look at it as love and fear, but I looked at it as I could lay in bed, be fed like a vegetable, eat whatever somebody else is cooking, no matter what I want to eat, and watch
yeah,
the TV channel they're watching because they're controlling the remote, not me. Or
yeah,
we could take the hard route and do the best that we can do and be proud and happy for, grateful for what God has given us from there.
yeah. And it takes a choice. We have to choose it and choose it even when we don't want to.
Oh
It's
yes,
easier just to
that's
be mad.
powerful there. That's
Yeah,
powerful there.
yeah,
We choose it even when we don't want to, but we
yeah,
know in the long run the blessings and whatnot that's going to be coming from that, the gratitude, everything from that.
yeah, yeah. I know in the hospital, how I dealt with not being able to walk was I would always try to begin with the end in mind. And what I mean by that is I fully believe that if we can't envision ourselves achieving it, we'll never achieve it, or whatever that is. And so I was envisioning myself being happy, being mobile, walking, being independent, and I lived from that point. And I just realized that if I live from that point, that's me, that's who I am, then I'll be more patient with the rest of me to catch up to that point. That makes sense.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I left the hospital and I mean, I could talk so much about that, but it took me a while to get over it. I mean, still is a work in progress. I went to school and got my graduate degree, which was a big accomplishment. Learned how to drive before then, which is a huge accomplishment I'm a C5, C6 quadriplegic. So what that means is, which many of you know, I don't have any triceps. I have biceps and shoulders a little bit, but nothing to brag about.
I'm a C5, C6, and boy, didn't you feel grateful? Didn't you feel more independent once you were able to drive again? I remember the first time I started
Absolutely.
driving, and it was day and night. My attitude changed. I'm sure I
Totally.
was pissing people off because they would
You're going
pick me.
fast, right?
Well, they would pick me up on their
Yeah.
time frame. You know, I
Oh,
I
yeah.
was going to school at college,
Mm-hmm.
and I say, well, I'm getting out at 2 o'clock, and then they show up at 2:30 or 2:45, and I'm out there waiting, and of course I knew I was saying some smart things in my mouth, trying to not
Yeah.
let them hear it as much. But yeah,
Yeah.
once you got that freedom to drive again, that was a game
Amen.
changer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember cranking it up to stereo and just letting the horses run. Cause like, this is my chariot. Like, I haven't ran for what seems like ages. I'm going to let the horses in my truck. I actually did a truck, which was crazy. It took me forever to learn. But once I got in it, I'm like, I'm not getting out of this. I'm going to drive-throughs, getting meals. I'm staying in this. I'm cathing myself because I don't want to get out of it. It's just freedom.
That's right. That's right. All right,
um,
Brandon. So what's number 3 then?
yeah, number 3 was after I got my graduate degree, I had a side by side ATV where I put hand controls on, and for graduation, I just wanted to go in the mountains and just kind of get away, self reflect, meditate, pray, whatever. And I went up there and I went to the back of the Wasatch Front, and I told my parents I'd be home in a couple hours. And I was in shorts, and short sleeve shirt. It was June 30th, a beautiful summer day. Got back up there and I went back to the very end of the road where I used to hunt and fish. And I noticed that they had a new road put in, like an ATV trail. And I thought for a moment, and like I had what's that quote by Yogi Berra that says, when you see a fork in the road, take it. And I say, okay, here's a fork in the road. If Yogi Berra says it's okay, and I'm going to take it. I knew where the right side would go back home. The fork, I didn't know where it would lead, so I took it. It was a horrible trap, and long story short, it stopped about 400 yards down the canyon. Where it stopped, there was a cliff right where it stopped, and there was a creek coming down, and just sheer drop off, and the road was steep. And so I took all my effort to get back up the road, and I'm going about halfway up, just about out of this trap, and I'm going over a pine tree route over the dirt road, and pause my ATV, my front 2 tires in the air, and I'm in this NASCAR type strap because, as many of you guys know, we don't have any stability. That gave me my stability. Well, when that rolled back, I let go of my hand, which controlled the brake and the gas, and rolled the ATV backwards, and ATV flipped, and it rolled off to the road, and I'm thinking, okay, this is it. Here goes, my life, and luckily it stopped just before I went over the cliff. And so I was just cheering for joy, like, wow, I'm alive. I can't believe it. And I went to go grab my phone, which is usually a lanyard around my neck, and I saw it, and from the force of the accident, it was like 3 or 4 feet away from me. I couldn't grab it, which is maddening. So I couldn't make a phone call. So the only call I could make was again, sorry to harp on this, guys, but this is the story of my life. It was prayer. That's the only thing I could do. I tried screaming, but I was in the middle of nowhere again. And so I just prayed for somebody to be inspired to find me. And it was a great summer day, so I wasn't too fearful. But as an hour went by, hitting upside down, I was like, okay, this is hurting. And not only that, but when I slid over on the side of the road, we had these red ants in Utah that are just nasty. And I guess the ATV demolished their home, and they weren't very happy about it. So they're literally walking all over me, biting me, and I'm like, you really? I can't really swipe them off, and so I'm really praying, and as I'm doing that, I hear a thunderstorm come up and over the front side of the Wasatch Front. I'm thinking, oh, this isn't good. And then it starts raining really hard. And I'm thinking, okay, no one's going to be out now. And I'm 9,800 feet elevation-wise. And when you're that high on for June, you get snow. And sure enough, it started to sleet, snow, and I started to freeze to death. And I slowly felt my body dying, my organs shutting down. I would go in and out of consciousness. I struggled immensely. I was in the worst pain I've ever felt. And what I mean by that is many of us know what nerve pain feels. This was 100 times worse. And I, instead of asking, God to save me, I'm asking God to really save me because I know I'm going to die. And I'm thinking of all the mistakes I made and wishing I would have lived my life better and just getting ready for that. And it's just a horrible thing dying alone. And I had nothing to comfort me except these birds and the snow, and that was it. And
then you say to God, you let me get this master's degree, and now I can do nothing with it.
Yes. I was. Trust me, I was. I was like, why? Like, I did all this time, and it's a big step for me. I can support myself. And now this.
Now, how old are you again now?
30. How old was I? 28 or 9, something like that. 20.
All right,
9?
so another roughly 10 years from your last incident.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm getting ready to die, and I get really mad. And I just said, I had this thought in my head. I don't know, it was an evil thought, whatever it was. And I just said, I'm just going to hold my breath. I'm going in and out of consciousness. I can't do this anymore. I had a thought that, hey, Brandon, you're going to heaven anyways, You've been a great guy. Check out. Go. And so I was just not all there and suffering. And so I was like, all right. So I held my breath, and it seemed like an eternity. And getting ready to literally just cross over. And I was holding it because I was in so much pain. The pain of me holding it was nothing. But right before I believe I was going to cross over, I had this feeling, and I don't know how to describe it. If it was words, well, I heard it in words, but I don't remember if it was me with my ears or with my soul. I don't know how to describe that. But it basically was a feeling and words saying, Brandon, breathe. Brandon, breathe. This is not your call. This is mine. I will decide how and when you go. Breathe. And this one was a very gentle voice and so powerful that I knew I couldn't say no to it. And so I felt some warmth inside my soul. And for 30 minutes, I'm struggling to breathe and get my cadence back and get life back into my body. And I hang on for maybe another hour, and then I can't do it anymore. And I think I die. I know I died. And the last words I remember saying is, God, take me or save me. I can't hold on any longer. Then a day and a half goes by that I'm not aware of. And I wake up in ICU at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake. And I wake up, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm alive? How did they find me? And the doctor was there. He's like, Brandon, you gotta understand, like, we didn't think you were gonna make it. And he said, you're literally in the history books. I'm like, what do you mean? When they found you, you were 73 degrees. Like, have you heard of the frozen man? I'm like, yeah. Well, apparently, I guess that's what I am. Yeah, I was cold, and so I'm like, okay, wait a minute, how did this happen? Like, how do you find me? And I wanted some answers, and I got the answers eventually. But what's interesting is 3 weeks when I came home. Well, I was discharged literally like 3 days after that, and I went to go thank. I live in Davis County in Utah, and we have a Davis County Search and Rescue Department. It's all about volunteer force, and these guys will show up at a moment's notice with their trucks and ATVs and search for people that get lost in the woods. And my parents knew that something had happened because I was not returning. They called the cops. The cops called search and rescue, and they had a search party. And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people looking for me. And they looked for me for hours and hours and hours through a storm. And they were about ready to call it off because people were getting hypothermia. They were freezing. And this guy that did find me, he had a feeling to go down this road and look for me. He thought surely no one's stupid enough to go down it. Well, that was me. And he found it. He found me. And when he found me, I was dead, he said there was no heartbeat whatsoever. And so he CV'd. He said, hey, I found him. No pulse. He said, the guy said I was a wise ghost. And so they took off my clothes. They cut off my clothes. I was frozen. And they wrapped me in a blanket. But the guy had a feeling. And I say this, and I hope it's taken in reverence, but this is something that this guy told me, which changed his life, and it's changed my life too. When he was young, he went to church, and he had a special blessing given to him that said that if he was faithful and if he was just a good man of faith, that he would have the opportunity to literally raise somebody from the dead if he remained faithful, and that would be a gift for him. I'm just paraphrasing. So he joined the Davis County Search and Rescue Department thinking that might be my opportunity. Well, sure enough, when he saw me, he's like, this is probably it. So again, prayer was a big part of this. And after the prayer, they said that my heartbeat started to come back, and they're like, holy cow. And they life flighted me off the mountain, and it was a miracle that I survived. They slowly warmed me up. But anyway, yeah, that was that. And then I went to work for 6 years at a hospital, and one morning while I was driving to work, I was head on by a collision going about 60 miles an hour, and totaled my face, had facial reconstruction, and had a lot of surgeries, and that took me a while to overcome. And knock on wood, I hope I'm done with everything, but those are a little bit of my adversities, and I could talk forever, but I think that's enough to understand some of my story.
And I would love to continue forever. This is just amazing. Again, the purpose of me with doing this September Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Month is to get out these stories for other people to know that even though tragedy comes, you can still live a productive life and still do. I mean, you probably can't do everything you would like to do, but you can do a majority of it. And even if it's, if it's, oh shoot, what do you want? Oh shoot, what do you want to call it? Adaptive or something. You still participate and do a lot of things. So now you were talking about being light flighted out of the canyon from there. So is that where this picture is supposed to be?
Yeah, that's a kind of reenactment of it.
Book. Yeah. So again,
yeah.
Brandon's book is "We Are All Paralyzed: The Remarkable True Story of Choosing to Live Life After 4 Life-Threatening Accidents." And then how old were you on the 4th one with the head-on collision?
34.
So a little faster than the others. So you went from 12 to 18 to 38, 28 to 34. Yeah. So I tell you what now, most of us, we'll go through one major tragedy. a bunch of thousand of minor little things, tragedy. And some of us will go through others as we get older in life. We're more subjective to other things, cancer, heart attacks, whatnot. But man, four of them in the prime of your time of life and everything
Yeah.
can make things a little difficult. And you mentioned about depression, hopping in and out, and that's very justifiable with that. So, hey, I'm sure you've heard of W. Mitchell. Have you ever spoke with W. Mitchell? Do you even
I
know
haven't.
W. Mitchell?
Uh, I don't know if I have, to be honest with you. It doesn't ring a bell.
Well, see, W. Mitchell, I had him open up September 1st, and you're the last one of this month for me.
Mm.
So, well, I feel like I've opened up with a gem and I'm closing with a diamond as well. So he,
That's nice of you.
well, he, again, a lot of us go through one thing, and that's enough. I mean, me getting paralyzed, that's enough. I don't want anything
Yeah,
else.
amen.
All right.
Yeah.
So one is enough. Well, he was actually in the late 60s, was in a motorcycle accident where he got 65% of his body burnt. Face is burnt,
Oh, wow.
lost his fingers and thumbs, his body's burnt, all them skin grafts for years, having to learn to redress and everything from the burns. 4.5 years later, he's flying one of them, I don't know if it was a Cessna plane, but the smaller planes for your own private little plane. And
Mm-hmm.
he had people on the plane with him, but there was ice on the wings, and he said it just wasn't flying right. So he come
Oh,
down to
no.
land, so they can get everything taken care of. And when he land, those little planes sometimes bounce when
Mm-hmm.
they land. The four people with him, they all walked out, no problem. When it bounced, it broke his back. So
Oh,
here
jeez.
he is, went through a ball of fire, then getting paralyzed. But now here
Mm.
you are, four times going on. I mean, somewhere in your life, you got to be going, I'm neither the bad luck person, bad luck
Uh-huh.
Joe going here, or man, I am the superhuman strength. And then actually, there used to be a show called Superhumans, and W. Mitchell, his story was on superhumans.
No, it's
So
cool.
if they ever had that show again, you definitely need to apply. So
Sounds good.
that's awesome.
Cool.
Now you mentioned, and you've had to. There's no doubt in my mind when I say this. You've had to have a powerful support system with all this. You talk about power of prayer,
Absolutely.
but again, the power of prayer, like I said, it can only go so far with the will of God as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you've had to have family, friends, people you don't know. This stranger said he had the healing power that was given to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you've had to have a great support system.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great asset, resource that it's been a blessing to me. I've been born of good parents, and I'm very. It's a gift. God gives us unique gifts, and all of our paths are different in life. With what our strengths and our weaknesses, but for me, that's been a gift, and maybe that's God's way of helping me, knowing that I would need that to get through what I've been able to get through.
Oh, yes. So, um, is there any one particular, and there may be multiples. I mean, I don't know if I'd be as positive after. I mean, well, I guess hold on now. When I say that, I can neither be, damn, look what happened again, or
Hmm.
four times surviving, and you're going, hey, and I mean, showing how strong you really are and everything. I mean, because you're positive, it seems like, and you've got to be neither going, man, I'm bad luck Joe, or man, I'm the strongest person to be tested like this forever.
Yeah, I think God gives us the opportunity to choose what direction we want to go with that. And what I mean by that is, we have these struggles, but Then it's up to us to decide, okay, how are you going to be with it? Like, I'm a firm believer, and this is scripture too, that for as a man thinketh, so is he. And I just knew that the power of thoughts, we control our own story. I mean, we can't control our circumstances. Don't get me wrong. I wish we could, but we can control how we react to them. And so I just knew that I've had so much taken from me. I've been challenged so many times that the only thing that I cannot give away unless I allow it to is my willpower, is who I decide to choose to be. That's me. That's a force inside of me that can't be taken away. And I've said this before, but if you don't choose your purpose, choose to embrace who you are, your circumstances are going to decide for you. And I don't care how good life can be. You're a great example of that. Those that are listening, we know the dangers that we have when people put all their happiness into their physical circumstances. I'm guilty of that. But as we get older, we realize that, hey, we all grow old, we all die. That isn't the life giver. That isn't what makes us truly happy. What makes us truly happy is who we are. It's what we can give. It's being a giver, not a taker. It's being able to better other lives. And that's what I've focused on. I now have my own private practice where I teach people. I'm a counselor. That's what I got my degree in, but I've gotten PhDs and my degrees in experience. And so the lessons that I've learned, I've compiled them into an acronym called Press Forward. And I believe you can't press forward thinking downhill thoughts. And so I work with those that are going through trials, that are going through addictions, to regain control of themselves, because we are our greatest asset, or we are our greatest liability. But it's a matter of how we decide to interact with what you can call it the universe, whatever life brings you. That's our choice, how to decide how to react to it. And it can be a bettering or bettering experience. Your choice.
It goes back to what you said earlier. You can choose love or fear. And again,
Yep.
that also goes in, you can choose to be positive, make the best out of it you can out of life, or you can be negative and just stay pissed off at the world, pissed off at God, and go from there and complaining about everything that happens.
Yeah.
Or again, positive, be grateful what you have, be grateful what you're going, maybe not what you're going through, but being grateful for the outcome. Because when you're
Yes.
going through, what's those things, when you're going through hell, just keep going through, and at the other end, it's going to be much better. As you're going through it, it may not be pleasant. But once again, you finally get through it and you're able to look back and you go, man, I'm pretty proud of myself that I was able to withstand that and look where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. People want to have a perfect life. And the problem with that is that you can't, there's no growth through that. You're not challenged. And people don't relate. Like, if I have someone trying to counsel me or someone trying to tell me how to live my life, I'm going to look at their life, and if it's perfect, I'm not going to buy a word they say, because they haven't been tested. They don't know what it's like to be in the depths of hell, to be in the depths of trial. The beauty about people that experience trials, that have lived through it, is that it takes them out of the perfect role and it puts them into a place called connection, where they can actually connect to others, because people see their difficulties. People know that you know what it feels like to suffer, to feel pain, to feel heartache, anguish. It's no difference than, I believe, the Savior. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, he suffered. That's why he can help us, because we know he knows what we feel like. He knows that. So I think it's a powerful tool that connects us to others and connects us to our higher selves and who we were always, I believe, meant to be.
Amen, brother. Speak it. Don't hold back, brother.
Amen.
So, all right. Well, Brandon, I appreciate you coming on here. Your story, your life is just short of amazing, remarkable. I really truly believe that your power of prayer is definitely been answered because you're still here and going. That God still, as they said, has a plan for you, and it must be in your counseling field that you can tell people, I may not be in that addiction, but I know what you're going through mentally and emotionally. I may not
Yep,
physically have been there, but like you said, if someone has an experience, how can they tell other people what they ought to be doing? And so I
exactly.
appreciate you being here. Your will is strong to live. That's obvious as well. And just appreciate you coming here. And I mean, we got plenty of people here that are just thanking you for being here as well.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for your time, and it's always a
Here's a
joy to serve. Okay.
here's a short little question here. Want to know if you have your book on a CD or
Yeah,
maybe audio book.
it's on
Nancy
Audible. It's on
Nancy
Audible.
is it is Nancy. She's legally
Yeah.
blind.
Yeah, Nancy. Oh, yeah, it's on Audible on Amazon. So if you type in "We're All Paralyzed," there's the physical copy, the Kindle version, and the audio book version.
There you go. Good. That's awesome. So I've written a few books, but I need to get them
Cool.
on audio as well. So I hadn't got that far ahead on it yet. So all right, Brandon, thank you, buddy, for coming in. Appreciate it. To
My
everybody
pleasure.
else that's coming in today, we have Jan, Rochelle, Nancy. Thank y'all for coming in and commenting and making everything great. Everyone else who's coming in on the replay, definitely share this out for someone that you know is struggling. Again, they do not have to be paralyzed physically, but they may be paralyzed emotionally, spiritually, mentally, something, all four of them, again, physically. And if this can help them, please give it to them to let them know that there is still life to live no matter what they're going through. Everybody else, if I can do anything to help, go to my website, professorofperseverance.com, and there's on the resource page stuff to help you build your resiliency, the overcome adversity, other checklists. Go ahead and check those out. Everyone else, thank you for being here. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.